Okay, survivors, quick update because finally we have actual State of Decay 3 news. I've seen the comments, the DMs, and the Reddit threads pacing in circles like extras from a Romero movie who just found a megaphone and a free case of Red Bull. State of Decay 3 is dead, Xbox shelved it, Undead Labs is absorbed, another studio fed into the content furnace. At this point, some of these discussions feel less like debate and more like the opening act of The Walking Dead, where everyone's already panicking before the title card even hits. The concern is understandable. It's been quiet, uncomfortably quiet. But today isn't speculation and it isn't coping. This update comes straight from Craig Duncan, the head of Xbox Game Studios himself, in a recent Games Radar interview. Not leaks, not rumors, and not someone reading tea leaves off a LinkedIn profile. This also isn't a trailer drop or a release date announcement. What it is, though, is the clearest confirmation that we've had in a while about where State of Decay 3 actually stands in development. Because there's a simple reality that people keep skipping over when panic sets in. Dead games don't get repeated executive playtests. In the interview, Craig Duncan was asked, "What can you tell us about State of Decay 3?" A direct question about where the game stands. And he replied, "I think the PR in this room will murder me if I give you the answer to that, so here's what I'll say. I've done a number of visits to that studio in the last 6 to 8 months. I've sat and played the game with the team a bunch of times. It's coming along really well. We're very excited about the franchise and its potential, so I'll certainly see a lot more of it in the coming year." On its own, that answer might sound simple, but the context around it's what matters. This wasn't a casual comment from someone passing through a studio once. Craig Duncan is the head of Xbox Game Studios, and he's talking about multiple visits over a 6 to 8 month window, sitting down with playable builds, returning more than once. That alone tells you that this project isn't stuck at the idea stage or buried in pre-production. When someone at that level makes the time to travel, play the game personally, and then come back again later, it usually means the build is stable enough to be evaluated and far enough along that feedback can actually be applied. This isn't concept art on a wall or a pitch deck in a conference room. This is a game that exists in a playable state and is being reviewed by leadership. What also stands out is what isn't in that response. There's no hedging language, no vague deflection, and no attempt to reset expectations with phrases about reworking scope or realigning vision. Instead, the message is straightforward. He's been there, he's played it, and development is progressing. This doesn't guarantee the final result, but it does rule out one of the biggest fears floating around the community. State of Decay 3 is stalled or quietly abandoned. A project that's in trouble usually generates excuses. This one is generating follow-up visits. This kind of involvement matters because it's how healthy projects are managed. When leadership is checking in at regular intervals instead of parachuting in once and disappearing, it means the game is being tracked, not ignored. These aren't ceremonial visits. You don't sit down and play a build multiple times unless there's something concrete to evaluate and something worth following up on. This isn't a flyby where someone pokes their head in, nods politely, and then moves the project to the Netflix cancellation shelf. But also, it lines up with what we've seen quietly happening in the background. Undead Labs has continued hiring. They've been working alongside other Xbox studios for support. And State of Decay 3 never slipped off internal roadmaps or studio messaging. Those are not the moves of a project being slowly pushed toward the exit. In contrast, games that are in real trouble tend to follow a familiar pattern. Leadership distance increases, messaging becomes vague, and updates start relying on carefully worded phrases that avoid specifics. That's when you hear about reassessing scope or stepping back to rethink direction. None of that shows up here. What we're seeing instead is oversight, repetition, and consistency. Now, that doesn't mean this game is finished or that it's immune to problems. It does mean that the project is actively being managed and reviewed, which is exactly what you want to see at this stage of development. Attention like this isn't given to games that are being written off. This update is useful, but it's also easy to misread if expectations aren't kept in check. This isn't a signal that a trailer is about to drop, and it isn't a quiet release date reveal hiding between the lines. Nothing here suggests that the game is finished or that development has suddenly wrapped up. What it does tell us is simpler and more practical. State of Decay 3 is still being worked on, still being reviewed, and still important enough to receive ongoing attention from leadership. Now, that's important because projects that are being written off usually stop getting this level of oversight long before the public ever hears anything is wrong. So this update isn't a promise, it's a confirmation that the work is continuing and that the game hasn't slipped into limbo. And right now, that discussion matters a lot. The concern around this game didn't come out of nowhere. Long gaps make people restless, and Xbox's recent history has trained players to be skeptical when updates go quiet. That reaction is understandable, especially for a franchise people care about and have invested years into. But if you step back and you look at what's actually happening instead of what people fear might be happening, the picture changes. The game is being played internally. Leadership has checked on it more than once and stated they will continue to do so, and development is continuing under active oversight. Those are concrete actions, not reassurances meant to calm people down. Projects that are truly in trouble usually show warning signs long before cancellation ever becomes public. Leadership pulls back, communication dries up internally, and updates start becoming vague or defensive. None of that lines up with what we're seeing here. What we're seeing here, instead, is a project moving forward without fanfare. Now, that doesn't mean that people are wrong for wanting to see gameplay or hear more. I myself want to see gameplay, preferably a long, uninterrupted shot. And wanting proof is reasonable. But based on what we know right now, State of Decay 3 doesn't look like a game that's been abandoned. It looks like a game that's being worked on quietly. So, we finally got some real State of Decay 3 news. Not a trailer, not a release date, and not a sudden flood of marketing, but at least a clear confirmation that the game is alive, playable, and receiving continued attention from the people overseeing Xbox's first-party studios. In an industry where projects can disappear without warning, hearing a calm, direct update from someone who's actually played the game carries weight. It doesn't answer every question, and it doesn't remove the need to eventually see gameplay, but it does establish that State of Decay 3 hasn't been forgotten or quietly sidelined. Now the ball's back in Undead Labs' court. When they're ready to show more, especially actual gameplay, that's when the next real conversation can start. Until then, let me know what you guys think. Does this update ease your concerns, or are you still firmly in the show me gameplay mode? And before half my comment section lights up with, "It'll be at the June showcase," we're going to get into that in the next State of Decay 3 video. So until next time, survivors, God bless, be safe. I'll see you guys in the dark.